Jumping back in with Ultrasound Knobology Part 2. Okay, well next we're going to discuss frequency. And frequency on the ultrasound machine is usually selected one of two ways. As you can see, this is a low frequency curvilinear transducer. And so our frequency range for the transducer is from 2 to 5 megahertz. Now, your frequency button, as seen up here, may allow you to actually select the frequency, such as 2 megahertz or 5 megahertz. Or it may select it in the form of a mode, such as P for penetration. And as you know now, penetration lowers the frequency. Or R for resolution. And as you know now, resolution mode raises the frequency. You may have something in between, such as general mode. And the frequency button mainly is if you need better resolution, you increase the frequency. You need better penetration, you decrease the frequency. And obviously you're trying to get the highest resolution for the given depth that you're imaging. The next button I want to discuss is zoom. And while zoom is self-explanatory in that you're zooming in on a portion of the image, there is two different types. There's read zoom and there's write zoom. Now, read zoom, as the name implies, happens after you've acquired the image. So the image is either frozen or it's saved and you're reading the image. While reading the image, you see an area that you want to zoom in on, and so you select that portion of the image and zoom in. This is the example below. The advantage to read zoom is that you can do it on a still image, meaning it's already been acquired. So maybe you're going back and reviewing a study and you see an area you want to zoom in on. You don't have to actually then go back to the patient, rescan them again, and zoom in on this area. The disadvantage is that you decrease the resolution as you zoom in on the area. And think of this as you're taking a 3x5 photograph, you're putting it on a copier, and you're magnifying it and blowing it up to turn it into a poster. Because the original resolution of that 3x5 photo stays the same, but you're enlarging the area, you're actually then decreasing the resolution of that photo. Where write zoom happens as you're writing the image. So this has to happen while scanning live. Think of this as you're taking a digital camera or camcorder and you're zooming in before you take the video or the picture. Because you're zooming in live, you can maintain the original resolution. So the advantage is that you maintain the original resolution that you're desiring and you don't pixelate or blur it out like you can with read zoom. The disadvantage is you have to be scanning on a live patient to do write zoom. So the next few buttons I want to discuss, I want to use this ultrasound machine image to illustrate. So we're going to discuss freeze and cine loop as these go together. Now freeze is pretty self-explanatory. It's this button here in the middle. And when you hit freeze, it freezes the ultrasound image right at that frame. What you may not know is that the ultrasound machine saves anywhere from 20 to 200 plus frames before you hit the freeze button. And you can access those frames using cine loop. Below the freeze button here, you'll see a trackball. It may be a touchpad or right and left arrows, but something that you're able to scroll with. And if you roll this trackball to the right, then what you're doing is you're scrolling through those 200 plus images or frames forward. If you scroll backwards or to the left, you're going through those 200 plus frames in reverse. And the advantage of this is that if you see a portion of your image that you're trying to focus on, but it's very fleeting, maybe the patient's breathing in and out, and as their diaphragm's moving up and down and pushing a portion of your organs out of view, you only capture what you're trying to look at for a brief second. Well, instead of scanning for a long time, waiting for that exact moment where you can hit the freeze button and get it while it's on the screen, you can just hit the freeze button, scroll forward or back to the frame that you're trying to capture, and voila, there it is. The next button I want to discuss is measure. Now, it may be labeled caliper on your machine. On this machine here, it's pictured as a ruler and labeled measure. And you'll likely have a set or a select button as well that will help you switch between the caliper, as we're going to see. So when you hit this measure button, it will bring up a caliper on the ultrasound machine. And what you'll do is you'll position one side of the caliper on one point, and then usually we'll hit set or select. That will highlight the other side of the caliper. You'll put that on the other point, and then the machine will measure the distance between the two. And then it will report out as distance here for you. Now that's in the case of just measuring a distance, but your measure button may also allow you to measure an area or a volume. This is just one example of a volume. What we did on the transverse bladder is we measured the AP diameter, and that was diameter 1. We measured the transverse diameter, and that was measurement 2. Then we rotated to the sagittal image, and we measured the superior-inferior diameter, which is diameter 3. Then the machine does a calculation and reports out a volume of 923 cc's. Now we'll cover the specific application of a bladder volume when we review the renal and bladder module. But for now, this is just to illustrate that the machine is capable of doing measurements both of diameter, area, and volume. Now I'm just going to mention real quick calcs or calculations, and that's this button here. And dependent on your software package on your machine and what exam type you're in, there is a myriad of different calculations that can be performed. That's how you get to those. The next two things I want to discuss: how to annotate, or likely is labeled text. There's a button right here that says text, and you hit that, and then it will bring up a cursor, and then you can use this entire keyboard to type out annotations on your ultrasound image. And many of them have quick lists that are either drop-down menus, can be found here. Every vendor is a little bit different on their quick lists for annotation, and many of these can be customized as well. The last button I want to discuss is save. Now, it may be labeled store or possibly even record. And on this machine, it's one single button. You hit this button that looks like a floppy disk. If the image is frozen and it's a still image, it will record that image. If you are live scanning and you're not frozen and you hit that, it will record a clip. Now, on some machines, this will be save image and save clip, or it might just be labeled clip. And you can actually change the clip settings to be prospective or retrospective. You can change the amount of time that the clip saves for, etc. All right, well, we've covered a lot of buttons today. I just want to do a quick review so that you know how much you've learned. If you look on this ultrasound machine, we first talked about gain. And you can dial up gain by turning this knob like a volume knob manually. You can hit this optimize button, which many machines have as an auto gain or an optimize, or you can use your TGC sliders for gain. We also discussed depth, and there's the depth button. If you press it up, it makes it shallower depth. If you press it down, it makes it a deeper depth. We also discussed the focal zone, which this machine doesn't give you the option of adjusting the focal zone. We covered how to change the frequency. We then discussed zoom, which here is the zoom button. After that, we discussed several things, including freeze and cine loop with the trackball here. We looked at how to measure something and how to do calculations. We then looked at how to save an image and how to annotate an image by hitting text and typing or using quick lists. Now, at the very end of this course, I will use this image again and we'll go through theoretically how to start an exam and walk through it step by step as a review. But next time we're going to cover the ultrasound modes, which are the 4 buttons that you see here.